Welcome back to A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. You search Locked On Sports Atlanta. And my next guest, one of the hardest working folks in the biz. I called her a gal pal a moment ago, but she's just more than that. She's actually Atlanta's best sports reporter. She is Maria Martin, joining us here from 11 Alive on
What's
A-Z.
up?
Hi,
hey,
Maria.
Zinno.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
A rare off day? Like, you look like you're actually having an off day. Is this like a rare off day?
No, this is not an off day. I actually have to go cover World Cup stuff, so I'm doing that in the next couple hours, but I'm not off.
I'm going to be mentioning that. You kind of just told the audience what's coming up next, but that's okay. It's a different kind of football. It's all right. No worries. That said, we have been out at Falcons camp for the last 2 days. We'll get to that in a moment, but 14 in a row, Maria. I mean, what can you say? What is the most surprising part of this winning streak for you?
I think the most surprising part is the amount of home runs that they're hitting and at a consistent basis. I mean, we're getting multiple games where there's guys hitting back-to-back jacks, and throughout the lineup, I think there's 11 different players that have hit the long ball in this 14-game winning streak. I think that's the most impressive and shocking part to me, and it's coming from a lot of guys that you wouldn't necessarily have guessed at the beginning of this streak, too. And even with Ozzy Albies getting out of the lineup, getting hurt, fracturing his foot, now you have Orlando Arcia having like 4 hit games. I mean, this is crazy. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who gets called up. Michael Harris is having just an unbelievable tear, having skipped AAA, and now he's a big leaguer for just a couple of weeks. Everybody is contributing. Everybody's hitting the home run ball. It's truly surprising, but I can't say that I don't hate it.
No, and again, I think for me the biggest and best part of the whole winning streak, really, to me, is Ronald Acuna, and seeing him sort of find his way a little bit. You know, you look at the games that he's played. Granted, you know, he was came back earlier than expected in the injuries, but you know, look, he's batted .283. He's got a .371 OBP. He's got an OPS of .918 during this win streak, which was, you know, he was .826 coming up there. So he's risen his OPS nearly 100 points during this win streak. And I think this team goes as he goes. And so as long as he's the guy doing everything at the top of the lineup, I think everybody else benefits from that.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that you hope for Ronald Acuna Jr. is he does stay healthy. And I think coming out of the injury, he kept consistently saying, I feel better than I ever have. And of course, you want to hear that as a Braves fan and if you're a Ronald Acuna Jr. fan, but now you're starting to see that come into fruition. He definitely does set the tone at the top of the lineup, and people do feed off of his energy. I mean, he's hitting the LeBron, the ice tray. I mean, he's just so electric every time he goes to the plate. And it's exciting to see him string together successful at-bats at the top of the lineup, but then everybody kind of trickles down off of that.
I mean, how much do you think Brian Snitker really has to do with this winning streak? Again, in reality, like they've hit 35 home runs during this winning streak. They have 63 on the season. Like nearly half of their home runs have come during this winning streak. This is a team that's got an ERA of 2.7 during the win streak. You know, they've given up just 35 runs. Heck, they gave up 41 runs. They gave up 35 runs in a 5-game span against the Padres and Red Sox earlier this year. I know Snitker's the manager, but in reality, these guys just started to play better. So how much credit do you give Snitker for all this?
Yeah, I mean, they're leading the league in home runs with 35. I think the Yankees are just behind them at 30. Yeah, I think Snit has a little bit to do with it because if you remember, he was talking about this meeting that he held. I think when we were there a couple weeks ago, he talked about this being out in Arizona. He just decided that the team wasn't playing to the caliber that he thought that they could be playing, so he called this emergency meeting. We still don't necessarily know what exactly was said. I'm sure that'll come out here in the next couple of days. But after that meeting, everything started to turn around for the Braves. So you have to wonder if Snit really did give them, and I can't really think that a lot of major leaguers would be super motivated by some just collective speech by the manager, but clearly it worked to some weird degree because after that, they've strung together 14 straight wins. I mean, they've been successful on the road. They've been successful at home. They're almost at that 15, which is the franchise record. Tying it is what they would do if they got 15 straight wins. So I don't know. I'd like to think that Snit has something to do with it. I don't think it's everything because again, they're Major League Baseball players and, you know, they can motivate themselves. But still, it's that interesting meeting that we don't necessarily know what was said. But after that, it seems like they've kind of figured it out.
No, and again, I don't say it to take anything away from Snit or the job that he's done.
Sure.
Look, the only thing I've ever been critical about Snit on is the way he manages a bullpen. I think that's still fair. Even successful managers get critiqued on the way they manage bullpen, but that doesn't mean he's a bad manager or he doesn't have anything to do with this per se. It's just one of those things where sometimes everything just clicks right, and maybe it is a word from the manager. Who knows? But final thought here on the Braves. It's weird because now that they're 10 games above 500, they're just 4 games out of first place in the NL East, and it's one of those things where the expectation seems to waffle. You come back in the beginning of the year and it's repeat as champions, and then it's well, let's get back to 500. Now it's we have to defend our crown. If you want to keep moving those goalposts as a fan, I get it, but I am just generally remember how hard it is to defend a World Series crown and why you haven't seen back-to-back World Series winners since 99 and 2000. So it's been 2 decades. It's a really, really tough task, and people just need to remember that. I know they're playing better, but what are your expectations, or have they changed at all?
I don't think they've changed at all. I mean, even when they were struggling for me, I thought that they could make a deep run in the postseason because this is a team that's taken us on a roller coaster in the last couple of years, particularly last year. I think the roller coaster was a little bit more windy than I think all of us would have liked. I didn't necessarily think they would go back to back just because I did know how hard that was. And just because they're winning 14 straight doesn't necessarily scream a World Series title to me. I think that they still have a lot to prove. I think if they can continue to, close in on the Mets, and the Mets will eventually fall apart, which is what I still think will happen. I still don't think it's necessarily a guaranteed back-to-back World Series title, but I still think that this is a team that's going to be super dangerous come October.
I cannot wait for the next Mets series, whether it's at Citi Field or here at Truist Park. I'm waiting for it because everybody is telling me the Mets are going to collapse, and they probably are. Look, I don't have a dog. I'm a Yankees fan, so I don't care if the Mets collapse. But that said, it's going to be fun to watch. All right, let's pivot to the Falcons. 2 days of minicamp today, the final day. Obviously, we're not allowed out there for media, but and again, I don't expect too much from minicamp, but just sort of your takeaways. And I know a lot of the focus was on Ritter and how much he was going to play, but where do you sit on this team right now and sort of progressively what we can look forward to after the dead period ends up and we get back at training camp?
Well, I can't wait for training camp, and I think everyone's probably under that same umbrella because finally they get to put the pads on, go full tackle, and we'll actually get some answers as to what this team might physically look like. We know who they are. We're starting to figure out who they are. Obviously, it'll get whittled down because they have 13 guys that can catch the football. That's not going to be the case even as we get into training camp. But I think my overall thought is I'm really impressed by just the work ethic and the energy of the guys that are out there. This seems to be a team that's incredibly motivated, and by what I'm not entirely sure because the Falcons team has been
to not be the laughing stock of the league, I guess, right?
Maybe that's it. And I think what it is a lot of young guys coming in that don't know any better, and maybe that's a good thing, and maybe that's what the Falcons really need because all of them want to prove themselves in the league. They have a great opportunity to do that, and it's crazy because some of the guys like Kyle Pitts, who have only been here a year, you're seeing the younger guys step up, be leaders, be vocal leaders. I think that's really impressive, and hopefully in training camp it continues. Saw a lot of trash talking out there on the final day of OTAs. Love to see that, even though it's not necessarily anything live. They're still doing 7-on-7. You can figure some things out, but you don't get a ton of answers. So can't wait for training camp. But my overall thought is I'm impressed by how much energy and competitiveness they have within each other right now.
As far as Desmond Ritter is concerned, we heard Arthur Smith talk a lot about his ability to understand the offense, talk a lot about his ability to comprehend it and how smart he is and how heady he is and everything else. And the only analogy that comes to my mind is when your friends, from a guy's point of view, want to hook you up with a girl and they lead with, she's got a great personality. What does that really mean? She ain't all that attractive. And what I feel like Arthur Smith may be coding is that, look, he understands everything, but physically he might have a little bit of trouble translating to this level. Again, I'm speculating. He has never said anything like that, but you get the same sort of sense that, he's never really focused and highlighted on his physical attributes.
I gotta be honest, I really don't. And I think yesterday when I tweeted out literally what Arthur Smith said, he said from the neck up, he's light years ahead of any other rookie quarterback. And a lot of people were tweeting back at me and saying, okay, figure it out from the neck down. And he wasn't saying that he hasn't figured it out. It's just when you're a rookie quarterback, that is a big transition to go from college to pro. And so I think he still has room to grow. He's even said that he does have a lot of room to grow. And that's just obvious when you're going from college to the NFL. We don't necessarily know exactly what he's going to look like, but he can command the huddle, which is what Arthur Smith said, which is a huge thing. And that's such a big transition from college to pro. I even asked Desmond Ridder, I think it was a couple days ago, what the biggest transition for him was. And he admitted, he said, listen, it was the play calling. So he's had to do, extra homework at home to make sure that he can take command of the huddle. And obviously the signals are a little bit different from college to the NFL. So I didn't necessarily get the sense that he wasn't overall thrilled with his physical ability. Obviously he wouldn't be here.
I mean, I agree. There are things with young quarterbacks that sort of jump off the page physically, right? And again, he's not a first-round pick, so there's nothing over the top physically gifted about him. Otherwise, he would have been a first-round pick. I mean, that's fair to say, I think.
Sure.
But that said, when you keep talking about the head up, I mean, from the right shoulder down to the right fingertips and the hips down to the feet, I mean, if all that stuff requires a lot of work, we're talking about a guy that's not ready to play at this point in the NFL. And I think in the big picture from the 30,000-foot view, it's like, well, if he's not ready to play, then what position are we in next year with 174 first-round quarterbacks coming out theoretically?
Yeah, I think that that's totally fair. And again, I think it's so hard to really assess it so far. I mean, all the stuff I've seen is just like routes on air and 7-on-7. You don't get a good grasp of a quarterback from stuff like that. Wait until we see him getting chased around and he has to roll out and make decisions that the coaches can't make for him. So we'll see what happens. But all the players have said he has a strong arm. It does look like he does have that. I'm honestly more concerned about Marcus Mariota. I know people don't want to hear that, and I think people really want him to be successful. And I'm not saying that I don't want him to be successful. Nobody wants that, but I just don't think that he's very impressive. I wasn't even impressed with him in routes on air 7-on-7. So,
no, he's not impressive. If he was impressive, he would be starting somewhere else. If he was impressive, they wouldn't have drafted good quarterbacks are not available on the open market to be signed for $4 million. Like, it's just, there's a reason why he was available and why it was so easy to get him and why he's a bridge for what he is. And I think that's totally fair. And on the upside, I'd tell us, look, if Mariota stinks, the more you can throw Ridder to the wolves and see what it is, then I think the better off long-term this team is.
I agree. And look, he's going to have to run for his life a little bit because this offensive line, as we know, is not going to go from being terrible to being amazing. So he's going to have some times where he's really got to think on his feet and make sure that he's making decisions, again, that the coaches can't make for him. So this is the perfect team to get thrown into the wolves by because they're going to do that time and time again every Sunday.
I want you to ask a coach that you know pretty well if my analogy about head up and she's got a great personality fits. He knows coach speak better than you and I do, for that matter.
That is true. That is true. Anyway. He usually dissects the coach speak for me, just so you know.
There you go. She's Maria Martin, 11 Alive, best sports reporter in Atlanta. Thanks for the time, as always. Certainly appreciate it. You enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go get some good football information for us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You bet, Zinno. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Back with said football information next, right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports Atlanta.